Chapter 1, The Spark of Defiance, Part 1. The cold bite of the wind gnawed at Tyrone's skin as he stood alone on the cracked pavement, staring up at the looming concrete flats. The buildings, once bright with life, were now just empty shells, broken windows, faded graffiti and rusted metal staircases creaking in the breeze. They seemed to stretch endlessly toward the grey sky, an unyielding reminder of a city that had swallowed hope long ago. Tyrone's hand curled into a fist, his breath visible in the air. The city was silent tonight, the hum of traffic faint, the world dimmed by the fog that seemed to seep from every corner. The streetlights buzzed weakly, casting faint glows that barely penetrated the mist. It felt like everything was holding its breath, waiting for something. But what? He had been here for as long as he could remember, this broken, unforgiving landscape that both shaped and trapped him. These flats were more than just homes to Tyrone. They were symbols. Symbols of a system that had abandoned him and countless others. Symbols of survival, of pain, of the countless lost souls who had come before him and the ones who would follow. There were no illusions in his mind. He wasn't here by choice. He wasn't in control of his life, not yet. But the fire that had been kindling inside him for years, it was burning now. Tyrone could feel it as he stood there, every muscle in his body tense, every nerve alert. He glanced back at the flats one last time. They seemed to mock him, these structures, these prisons. He knew every crack, every chipped window, every dented door. These buildings held his past, his memories, his battles. Each mark was a story, each scar a reminder of what he had fought for and lost. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, distant but clear. "You're going to make something of yourself, Tyrone. Don't let the world make you small." She had said those words to him when he was just a boy, sitting on the edge of their worn-out sofa in a flat not too different from this one. She had believed in him, in a way that Tyrone wasn't sure he even believed in himself. He shook his head, pushing the thought aside. There was no room for sentimentality now. The world had hardened him, and the fire inside him burned with purpose. Tyrone turned away from the flats and started walking down the street, his boots hitting the pavement with rhythmic determination. He was used to this path, the dark alleyways, the flickering neon lights, the sound of distant sirens. But tonight felt different. There was something in the air, something that made the city feel less like home and more like a stage for something bigger. As he walked, his thoughts drifted to his childhood. The sounds of his parents arguing in the kitchen, the weight of his father's absence, the violence of the streets that had forced him to grow up faster than he should have. His fingers twitched as he remembered the day he had been forced to fight just to survive, just to make it to school without being knocked down. The scars, both visible and invisible, were part of him now. Tyrone's mind wandered further back, further to the days when things had seemed simpler. The conversations with his older brother Jamal about the world beyond their block, about escaping, about making a difference. Jamal had been the one to dream. Tyrone had just listened, his hopes tempered by the harsh reality of their circumstances. "One day, Ty," Jamal had told him, "we'll find a way out. We'll make it out and we'll bring everyone with us." But Jamal was gone now. Gone in a haze of smoke and gunfire, lost to the violence that seemed to swallow everything good in this world. Tyrone had never told anyone how much he had felt that loss, how it had broken him in a way he couldn't articulate, how it had made him question everything he thought he knew about the world. As he walked, the weight of his past pressed down on him, and he couldn't help but feel the pull of his mother's words once again. Make something of yourself. Tyrone turned another corner, heading toward a quiet street where the neon lights were dimmer and the shadows seemed to stretch longer. This was where he usually found his bike, chained to a rusty pole. It was the one thing that belonged to him, the one thing that could take him away from here, even if only for a short time. He approached the corner, his boots scraping against the wet asphalt, and his fingers tightened around the keys in his pocket. He wasn't sure why he always returned here, to this place. Maybe it was the familiarity of it, the way it felt like an anchor in a world that had no place for him. Or maybe it was the bike itself, the sense of freedom it gave him, the feeling of being able to ride away from everything, if only for a few precious minutes. His bike was there, waiting for him as always, chained to the pole, its black frame glistening in the dim light. The lock clicked open with ease, the sound small but significant. He swung his leg over the seat, feeling the familiar weight of the handlebars beneath his hands. With a quick push, he began to pedal, his body moving in sync with the rhythm of the tires against the wet road. The world around him seemed to blur, the city passing by in streaks of light and shadow. The neon lights overhead flickered, casting strange reflections on the pavement. For a moment, Tyrone felt like he was floating, free, unburdened, and in control. But even as he rode, something gnawed at him. The city was alive, but it was also dying. There was a sense of inevitability to it all. The constant advertisements for AI-driven products, the towering skyscrapers of corporate control, the empty faces of the people who passed him by, they all blended together in a blur of hopelessness. Tyrone couldn't escape it. Not completely. No matter how fast he pedaled, the world he was running from was always there, just behind him, waiting to catch up. And yet, in that moment, on his bike, he felt a spark, a defiance, a promise to himself that he would find a way out. He would make his own future, no matter what it took. The road ahead was quieter now, the lights dimmer, but Tyrone pedaled harder, faster. There was something in the air, something telling him that tonight was different. The winds were stronger, the fog thicker. It was as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. His thoughts turned inward again. He thought about his relationship with his father, how the man had left when Tyrone was just a boy. Tyrone's anger toward his father had been sharp and unforgiving, like a knife. But over time, that anger had faded into something else, emptiness. There was no closure, no reconciliation. Just silence. The kind of silence that made you wonder if anything had ever really mattered in the first place. He thought about his conversations with his mother. She had always been the one to keep him grounded, to remind him that there was more to life than just survival. She had been his anchor, even after his father had left. "You're strong, Tyrone. You'll rise above this. I know you will." Her words echoed in his mind, and he clenched his jaw, pushing back the bitterness that always seemed to follow those memories. But then he remembered something else. His mother had passed away years ago. The ache of her absence was something that never really went away. It lingered like a shadow over everything he did. He passed a familiar alleyway, the one where he had spent countless hours as a teenager, learning to defend himself against the world. His first fight had been here. The first time he had ever thrown a punch, the first time he had stood up for himself. But the fight hadn't ended there. Tyrone had become known around the block, both feared and respected, but at a cost. His anger had turned into something else, something darker. He had become hardened, a shell of the boy he once was, the boy who dreamed of escape. Now he was just a man trying to survive, trying to find his way. But tonight, as he rode through the streets, Tyrone felt something stir inside him. A sense of purpose that had been missing for far too long. The city had taken everything from him, and yet it had given him something in return, something he wasn't ready to lose. He would fight, he would rise, and he would find a way out. To be continued.